Section 2.4, homework problem number 6. So here's an example. So here, if for both problem 6 and 7, we are going to use the benchmark method to compare them to see which one is bigger. So the benchmark method, you have to pick a benchmark number. And which number do you pick? It depends on the fractions given. For example, when I look at these two fractions given, in your case or my case, 3, 7, 5, 11, and notice that 3, 7 is very close to 1/2. How did I know that? Because when I look at the 3/7, and I'm thinking, okay, what's half of 7? Half of 7 is going to be 3.5. And notice, so if I have 3.5 in the numerator, it's going to be exactly 1/2. That can be simplified to 1/2. But what we have is 3, which is smaller, a little bit smaller than 3.5. That means, okay, this fraction is a little bit smaller than 1/2. So that's how I know this number is very close to 1/2. Similarly, 5/11, and when you look at, you always start from the denominator. You can always start from the denominator. It's a little easier. And you will take half of 11, which is 5.5. Again, 5 is very close to 5.5. So that means the number is very close to 1/2. So that's why I'm going to pick 1/2 as my benchmark. And notice in the next question, number 7, you're not going to pick 1/2 because 19 is very close to 20, and 27 is very, very close to 28. So both of them are going to be close to 1, not 1/2. Okay, so let me first finish the example for number 6. And so what we need to do, I'm going to, right here, I didn't draw a number line, but you could draw a number line to help you view this. So let me draw a number line here. And I'm going to, because I already, by looking at these two fractions, I already determined both of them are going to be very close to 1/2. So I'm going to write down the benchmark, 1/2. And I just need to determine, okay, so which of these two fractions is closer to 1/2. So I'm going to just put, let's say 2 dots here. One of them is going to be my 3/7. The other is going to be 5/11. I just need to figure out which one of these 2 dots is going to be 5/11 or 3/7. Okay, and so I already gave the answer here. 5/11 is larger, but the important thing is the explanation and why. So we have to explain, and by using the definition of fractions. And again, because they said you cannot use common denominator, common numerator, or cross multiplying. So these 3 or convert into decimals. So you cannot convert them to decimals to compare, cannot use cross multiplying, cannot use common numerator, cannot use common denominator. Okay, so which means you have to use the benchmark method. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to try to check the differences between these two, from each of the 2 fractions to 1/2. And it's like how far away 3/7 is from 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to have to do a subtraction here. So 1/2 minus 3/7 equals what? And we actually haven't talked about the subtraction of fractions. We are going to talk about this in chapter 3. And so what we're going to do is we can think of this way. And one thing we need to know is when we do subtraction, if they have different denominators, we cannot subtract them. So I am going to change the denominator from 2 to 7. And the form of we actually is not going to be like this, but this way we're not really asked to do subtraction. We just need to know which number is closer to 1/2. So I could change this 2 to a 7. Maybe I should write it separate. So I'm going to change that 2 from the denominator from 2 to a 7. And in order to keep the equivalence, and remember the top number is half of the bottom, 1 is half of 2. So the number I'm going to put in my numerator is going to be half of 7, which is 3.5. So that tells us 1/2 is equivalent to 3.57. Normally, that's not a fraction, okay? Because fraction, you cannot really have a decimal in the numerator. But again, because right here, we don't really care about the format or whether it's a fraction or not. We only care about which one is closer. So this fraction 1/2, we're going to get rid of it, and we're going to use this 3.57. Okay, again, why did I have to do that? Because I want to turn the denominator to the same as the same number as the same denominator. So now I can do subtraction. So this many parts, 3.5 parts minus 3 parts, that gives us 0.5 parts. And the denominator, the size doesn't change. So that tells me this is how far. My language, I use the 1/2, but you can use 0.5 if you want. So 3/7 is 0.5 seventh away from 1/2. Okay, and this is a better language, but it might be a little hard to understand. So, but you can see this, what this number is, how far. This is the distance, or how far, distance of 3/7 to 1/2. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing. Find out the distance, how far 5/11 to 1/2. So let's try here. I'm gonna move this up so I have place. I'm gonna put a 1/2 up here. So I'm gonna do it right here. So we're gonna do 1/2 minus 5/11. Again, because 2 and 11, they don't match. So I'm gonna have to change my denominator 2 to 11. And again, the numerator has to be half, because 1 is half of 2. That means the numerator is half of 11, which is 5.5. So let's get rid of the 1/2 here and replace it with its equivalent number, fraction 5.5/11. So now we can do subtraction. 5.5 parts minus 5 parts, that's 0.5. Which is, if you want to use fraction, it's going to be a half of a piece. Okay, 0.5 means half of a piece. All right, so you can use that language if you want. So now this, what's this answer? This is the distance of 5/11 to 1/2. Okay, so we figure out the distance from each number to 1/2. Let's look at these two. Now notice they both have, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. It's not 7. It should be 11. This 11 doesn't change. The size doesn't change, so the bottom should be 11. So when you look at them, they both have the same numerator, which means they both have a half piece. But so it's like if the principal bought 1 pizza and give my class half a pizza, 0.5, give your class half of the pizza, which is 0.5. And in my class, I have 11 students. In your class, you have 7 students. So the one with the smaller denominator is going to be end up with a bigger share. So each of the students in your class is going to get a big size, because you only have 7 students. Less people, more share, right? So that tells us this distance is bigger. So I'm going to label it here. So this distance is a bigger distance, or larger distance, because this one actually is a smaller distance. Smaller distance. So what does this mean? That means 5/11 has a smaller distance to 1/2, which means it's closer to 1/2. So when I put 5/11 down, it should be right here, because it's closer to 1/2 compared to 3/7, and 3/7 should be further away. And now look at these 2 points. So now we can ignore the benchmark 1/2 now. So you don't have to look at 1/2. You just look at the blue dot and the black dot, and notice that any number on the right is going to be bigger. So this one is on the right, that's going to be bigger. So that's how I got 5/11 is bigger. Okay, so one of the important things you need to explain is 5/11 is closer to 1/2. Why? Because it's this far away from 1/2. Half of 11th away from 1/2, which is a smaller distance compared to half of the 7th.